Hello, investors. This is Todd Thomas, Associate Portfolio Manager with Revere Asset Management. Today is Saturday, July 25th. The time is 12:12 p.m. Coming to you from Boca Raton, Florida, to bring you the Revere Roundup Weekend Walkthrough. And as always, state of the market, we have now the four coveted green arrows. However, there is a little bit of a new item on the charts here with a cautionary stop sign on the short term and the medium term. However, before getting into that, we did upgrade the long-term 200-day to a green arrow as the Russell and the mid-cap indexes were both able to get above their 200-day moving averages. The mid-cap actually started the week before last, but the Russell did overcome it this week. The cautionary sign here is a result of sentiment, which we'll get into here in the slides today, as well as extension above the 50 and the 21-day EMA. But the sentiment is really the main reason why we've set up a cautionary arrow. Going over to a summary of the gains on the week. Overall, it was another strong week, shortened holiday with the 4th of July, new highs on the S&P and the NASDAQ, and small caps clear the 200-day. The big eight were up 0.24%. The RG8 composite was up 2.28%. The S&P was up 1.7%, and the RSP equal weight S&P was up 2.37%. So breadth was strong across the board this week. Qs were up 1.48%, but the equal weight was up even more at 2.17%. Dow continued to strength up 2.3%, mid-caps up 2.8%, the Russell 2000, the leader on the week, up 3.52%. 60/40 was up 1.56%, GROTECTION up 1.56%, and Turbo up 1.71%. What happened last week? The power trend continues to lead the markets to new highs on both the NASDAQ and the S&P. The big, beautiful bill was signed into law by President Trump yesterday, with Vice President Vance casting the tie-breaking vote. Trump also last week threatened additional tariffs on Japan up to 35%. Israel agreed to the necessary conditions to final a 60-day ceasefire with Iran. The June job numbers came out hot on the surface, but actually when you analyzed them below the surface, they were a little bit cooler with some nuances. Tesla delivered 384,000 vehicles, just below estimates, but not as bad as feared. Also notable, over the upcoming week, we will be approaching that July 9th deadline for the tariff deal, which ended the 60-day extension. And we did make deals with China and Vietnam, as well as the UK. However, again, we're having some delays with other countries such as the Eurozone as well as Japan. Getting into sentiment, I wanted to show the CNN fear and greed is getting up into the extreme greed. This is again the reason for the yellow cautionary sign on our trend gauge. The individual investor sentiment, bullishness, went up to 45 this week. Again, that was a big jump. And the number of bears went down to 31. So that's one of our key indicators. NAAIM, these are the professional money managers, shot up to 99. So another cautionary sign. Going back through last year, every time, again, the top chart here shows NAAIM closer above 100, and it corresponds to short-term tops and pullbacks with some severe. Again, this was the start of the trade war here, and now we're back to that 99 level. And again, we did drop last week to 81, or the week before last, which we got excited about, but it quickly shot back up. That was as the week of 6/18 got up to 94. However, not all is lost here. This particular chart shows the number of times we had a 26% surge and what happened 59 trading days later. And again, these are fairly rare instances, and this goes back into the 50s that we've only had a handful of occurrences. Every time we've come back this fast off a correction or a bear market, the forward 12 months ahead were 19.7, 19.9, 14, 18, 31%. And now we're into the next situation, so we don't know. So this is not, the action that we're seeing in the stock market is not bearish, historically speaking. Also, cycle fans, the S&P is up 23.75% in the last 13 weeks, a rate of change of at least 23% in 13 weeks has occurred only 4 other times in the last 30 years. And it's labeled on this chart, July of 97, 99, 2009, and June of 2020. Whoever thinks the market is close to another major top should think again based on this, as these did not mark a top by any means in the market. So even though sentiment is cautionary in the short run, we are not seeing indications based on the characteristics of how quickly the market's rallied that this is by any means a bearish situation. Next, we passed the big, beautiful bill yesterday, and I quickly just wanted to go over some of the big things that were in this bill, because this will impact all of us potentially, and it could potentially also impact the market and individual sectors of the market. First of all, there's an increase in the standard deduction. Also, I won't get into the child tax credit. The state and local income tax deduction increases from $10,000 to $40,000 for single filers earning, well, we don't need to get into the phase outs and all that, but that is a huge increase of the deduction, which basically phased out most people from higher property tax states like New York and some of the other states, and now it puts 40,000 back on, which is helpful to those states. There's a senior tax break of 6,000, tips and overtime income deductions. Taxpayers earning under $160,000 can deduct tips and overtime from their income. Also, there's an automobile loan interest deduction and the establishment of new Trump accounts, which are tax-advantaged savings accounts for children under 8 years old, where you can put up to $5,000 a year, and it acts as a Roth IRA. And they can hold that money through indefinitely, or they can take half of it out when they're 18. There's various rules on that. So that could be another area of a tax-free account for savings. For businesses, the QBI deduction increases from 20 to 23%. This is a big deduction for business owners. Bonus depreciation. This is very bullish for capital purchases. Section 179, which is another depreciation, allowing you to expense 100% of the cost of certain items. That increased also. Business interest deduction and opportunity zones. Notable changes also, in addition to for individuals and businesses. We have an exemption for the estate tax rising to $15 million for individuals and $30 million for married couples. Itemized deductions are, again, with a state and local income. Green energy credits are phased out or eliminated, but apparently it wasn't quite as bad as expected. You had a big rally last week in solar stocks, so it was a little bit favorable, but it's still going to be a big phase out. Potential industries impacted negatively. Healthcare, there was about $1 trillion cut to Medicaid, and there's a fear that this could put strain on hospitals and clinics, especially in rural areas. Again, we talked about the green energy. The EV tax credit phases out after September 30th of 2025, and there's going to be increased taxes on private colleges and university endowments. All right, getting into the biggest winners for the week. Symbotic, which is a robotics play, was up the biggest. IREN, which we talked about last week in our watch list, was up 20%. Robinhood continued. Dave, Reddit, broke out of this little bottoming type pattern it's been in. SoFi was another standout, and a couple others. Really nothing major on the downside. The worst being 7%. Now let's get into the charts. Starting with the S&P, up 1.7% on the week into 2 weeks of new high territory. Don talked in last night's video about some of the extensions from the 50. Not so bad from the 21-day, although it's getting up there. But the real concern is the extension now from the 50-day moving average. So we would expect, with the sentiment increasing, a potential pause, ideally sideways action, or potentially a pullback again into the moving averages here. RSP, again, not quite at new highs yet, but did have a decent week and performed better than the S&P, showing breadth improved across the board, which we also saw in the small caps. Q's also new highs, again up 1.5%. Equal weight again, showing breadth a little better, up 2.17%. Dow still not at all-time highs, but had a good week, up 2.3%. Mid-caps, again, showing breadth, and smaller and mid-cap stocks up 2.8%. Well off the highs still, but again, above all the longer-term moving averages now, and distancing itself from the 200-day moving average, which we talked about being a bullish event over the last 2 weeks. The Russell finally overcame all of its short-term moving averages as well and distanced itself this week, all 4 days. Again, Monday closing right on that 200-day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday accelerating, which is very bullish. VIX now down to 16.38, continuing, well, slightly up on the week, but again, in that fairly favorable zone. The dollar down about 0.5% on the week, but did show a reversal after making a low on Tuesday here, getting very extended to the downside on the month, flat overall so far. Gold up almost 2%. Gold miners up 4.3%. So again, with the passage of this big, beautiful bill and the now realization of bigger deficits ahead, gold could potentially be an area to watch once again. Silver continuing to hold up well, up 2.7%. Again, trading very tightly here and above its short-term averages. Bitcoin up 2.6% on the week. Again, been in a very tight range now for the last several weeks. Total bond market index down slightly. Yields down slightly, 0.48 on the 20-year. And the 30-year bond yields up just slightly at 4.86. And the 10-year also up on the week, 4.34%. So let's get into our watch list for the week. Again, we filter out stocks that trade less than 60 million on the average daily total dollar volume. I sort this first on my flag stocks and then second by composite rating. So again, so many strong stocks. Most stocks are in the 90 on up composite rating, and this is going to be the strongest stocks. CCJ continuing to stand out, trading solidly above the 8-day moving average. Not giving much of an opportunity to get into this, but again, very strong and very strong numbers ahead. Credo, flat week overall, so 2 weeks tight in the new high territory. Toast, spinning a flat base. Again, several shakeouts after looking like it was going to break out into new recent high territories. Again, still well off its IPO highs from back in 2021, which we saw in Robinhood, which now overcame those 2021 highs. Coinbase is also below that, but this is continuing to trade in this flat base, which is 12%. So my contention here is just wait for the breakout on this thing, because look at how many times it's just been sent back into the lower end of the base I'm going to want to see a strong breakout of this stock. Viva, multiple week tight. Voodoo, looking at kind of a 2-3 week tight situation here. SE lost the 10-week moving average this week and the 50-day moving average. Nirvana resurged itself and made a new weekly all-time, not all-time, but a new weekly 52-week high here, coming up against these old highs from 21 also. LPLA is also trading in a flat base of about 10% here. Got shaken down to this, but then quickly recovered back to the top of the base, watching this. Pan American Silver. Silver holding strong and this trading tight. Power strong this week, up 1.38%. Robinhood, huge week, up 13.6%. And we took some offensive profits on this. This is getting extremely extended at 4 average true range above the 21 EMA. So again, we've sold off a lot of our position here, but this is also very bullish because it is into new all-time highs from this 2021 high. And this is the first week it broke through that. So these things can go a lot further than you think. So we do hold a core position in this. Avgo new highs. Micron, again, giving a potential entry into the 21-day moving average this week. Again, this is up over 200% from the lows and 35% from this breakout into earnings. Pulled back nicely into this 21-day moving average. I did take a position on Thursday as this was able to show some strength and a reversal off of that 21-day. Oddity, again, continues to build in this tight range. Talked about this multiple weeks now. AGX in the construction area backed off a little bit. Also, again, just trading tightly around the 8-day moving average. Contract manufacturer strong again, flat week here. Okay, we talked about, added this one to the watch list last week because of this wall of blue volume back here, which is extremely strong. Look at every single day. Just, this is institutional buying just in your face right now. And look at the huge sales growth coming up on this. This is a Bitcoin miner that turned kind of into a data center play. And you can see that this is another one of these IPOs from back in 2021. Still below the IPO low of, or the IPO opening highs of 28.25. So this is one to continue to watch, which acts extremely strong. Zscaler, again, the security area is continuing to trade at multi-year highs, tight, but not making much progress here. Taiwan Semiconductor with 2.7% gain on the week. Cloudflare, another software and firewall company, again, consolidating. ARM backed off from this congestion area. It's gone back, the last couple of years here in this. Watching this closely as, again, it's starting to move back up into those resistance levels. VRT trading tight on the week. Rambus is a new name that I added also on the watch list last week. It's got this cup with handle-based breakout and some decent numbers ahead. GEV trading tight on the week. Had a little shakeout this week down to the 21 EMA, but you can see it bounced. Again, we've had a couple shakeouts down to the 21 EMA. Again, back below that 500 area, but closed above that key 500 area. And this is looking bullish still. AVAV giving some back 11.5% after they had a convertible and an upsized secondary offering, but did hold the 8-day moving average. So a potential area to watch for an entry. Uber trading very tight. We're watching this closely. TurboTection is in this. The firm showing some strength. ASM lithography in the semiconductor equipment area, coming back up through the 200-day moving average and a new potential stage 2 uptrend here. Tapestry in the retail area, new all-time high. Snowflake, tight on the week. CyberArk, another stock tight here in the security area. Oracle, a Toddzilla holding, bought into this consolidation here, broke out on an upgrade, pulled back, and then closed very strong on the week. Notice the heavy volume here, and this is another sign of institutional buying. You had a nice earnings gap with huge volume on the earnings week, and then huge volume on a short holiday week. This is definitely a big liquid leader right now to watch. Flextronics, post-earnings gap, or not post-earnings, but definitely strengthened the contract manufacturing area. Urban Outfitters building this flat base. Disney trying to break out of this big consolidation, 35% deep base. Relative strength actually making new highs for Disney. Again, not necessarily a stock we're interested in. I'm just highlighting this as a stock that's coming out of a potential big base. Cadence Design, another stock coming out of a potential base. Had some of these base on base patterns. This is a stage 1 base and had a very solid week, up 7%. Again, just slightly into this pivot zone here. Bit choppy, but watch for tightness up here as this is a designer of semiconductors. And without a doubt, we're seeing nice strength in the semiconductor area. Had this one on several weeks. Again, not much out of this right now. Shake Shack, a new buy out of GROTECTION this week. Beautiful base here setting up. And again, going back to multi-year closing highs here and all-time closing highs on the weekly. So not bearish what we're seeing in these leaders, folks. TKO is another name watching that's just showing extremely tight action. The other thing that's notable here is the strong acceleration in sales, triple-digit earnings, and strong sales ahead. So again, definitely a name I'm watching closely. Coinbase, with another all-time weekly closing high after a new high last week. Again, turbos in this. I've been particularly focused on pullback buys in this market. And I did buy personally this one for Toddzilla on the pullback into this 8-day moving average, and it had a nice follow through. Again, you can get a situation where it's pulling back into an average and you got a pretty tight out on it. This is a situation I do like, and I do like how this is, last week was able to just get through all these highs on a weekly basis, and it's still shy of this 429.54 high. And I just believe these highs and some of these IPOs from 2021 are now magnets, and I think these stocks are going to be approaching these levels. But we don't predict. We interpret it and we manage the position. AMD down 4% on the week. Again, potential pullback buy area into the 80 MA. We're not, this has had a couple of pullbacks into the 21 EMA. Now that this sentiment's heating up, maybe another pullback into the 21 day would be the entry on AMD. Lights, another Toddzilla holding. Down a little bit on the week, taking a little break. Pulled back below the 80 MA, but held pretty strong. Again, triple-digit earnings coming up. Coherent's another name I like the looks of. Again, they compete with the light. In this area, the optics area is looking really good. Transceivers, laser optics. These are technologies used in transmitting data in and out of it and throughout the data center. Overcame the 200-day moving average and closed at basically the high range for the week here. Coupang, another stock into the new stage 2 uptrend here, acting well. Southern Copper doing well. BWX Technologies in the nuclear reactor business, as well as they serve the government and military reactors for submarines and ships, trading very tightly here. Cooper in the mortgage servicing area. ERJ, we've had this one on the list. Into the profit-taking zone. Boeing's another one that's continuing to act well in the aerospace and defense area. Transidyne made progress into this pivot zone after breaking out of a long consolidation. Hinge Health, again, was contemplating taking a position into this old high area here on the pullback this week. Again, I'm big right now into buying pullbacks. And again, I was eyeballing this on this old high breakout. First, we did have an IPO base breakout last week, and it's been very volatile. So you want to be careful with these. The ranges are extremely high. But if you can get something like this into that pullback, into the old highs, then your lows are only 3-4% away as a stop loss. So if this had broken that low of 43.25, and had I taken a position in this, I may have used that to start cutting in that area. Live Nation, another tight stock we're watching. Oklo, again, consolidating and congesting after a big base. Potential next buy point. Again, below the 21-day EMA, but a nice trend line break could be a new entry back into Oklo. SMR, same thing, consolidating, a little bit of a pullback into the 21 here. Rocket Lab, all-time highs, 2 weeks straight. Not much of a gain here, but another stock to keep an eye on. Reddit, another name that Turbo bought a position in this week, advancing nicely back above all its averages here, and this has been on the watch list. Personally, have not taken a position in this, but I do like the way it looks. Roku, another name I'm watching. SMCI closed up 2.06%. See if it can start making some progress here. Relative strength is not quite what I'd like to see here, but again, I'm watching this name. CoreWeave, giving the opportunity to buy into the 21-day moving average this week. This is another name I've been eyeballing. And again, you can see a nice pullback into this 21 was potentially your opportunity. Now, again, you might have a trend line break, but this is definitely an IPO to keep an eye on, and a nice high tight flag formation. Freeport-McMoRan and copper was up 4%. We've highlighted this name. Rubrik, another pullback entry today, or potentially this week, that I contemplated into the 50-day moving average. Again, take your position as it moves back above the 50-day with a stop loss at these lows, gives you 2-3% stop loss. And again, now potentially a trend line break coming up as your secondary entry. Nebus, down a little bit, 3% on the week. I think this looks pretty good. Not, again, would like to have seen this close a little better on the week, but basically trading very tightly along its 8-day moving average. Sales, another IPO I'm watching, got stopped out of this one as it broke through this flag low, but did shake out below the 21 and back up. So again, watch these 21 days for pullback entries. Lemonade pullback this week, or slight up on the week. Guardian Health watching this. IONQ in the quantum area, a lot of these look attractive. This was up 10%. Decent week. CLS, again, not viable here, but just very notable strength in the contract manufacturing. Palantir, after the Russell rebalance, did end up closing above its 21-day moving, or right on the 21-day moving average. So looking decent, held up on the 10-day moving average. Again, another potential pullback entry point on stocks, and this did that. DoorDash, again, extended, but looking good. ATI trading tight. SoFi, another name that broke out this week. This is a fintech name. New 52-week highs, but again, these 2021 highs well overhead. So perhaps another name to keep an eye on, as it was able to break through in the new 52-week high territory on good volume. Spotify backing off about 6% this week. Seagate just continues its monster run. It's been on here week after week and has never closed below the 8, and that's just massive strength. CrowdStrike, new highs on the week. Next Tracker in the solar area, Shakeout +3 entry this week. Shakeout down to the 200-day moving average, or I'm sorry, the 50-day moving average below this previous low. Shakeout 3 points above here was a nice buy signal, and just continued rip-roaring strength with relative strength making new highs. Also a new IPO-based breakout. So a lot to like here. Datadog added to the S&P 500, bringing it back to life. KD with a nice cup with handle breakout this week. This is an IBM spinoff, and not decent earnings growth for sure. Sales are a little bit lax, but this is a new all-time closing high. Dynatrace, a name watching in the construction area. Kratos Defense backed off a little bit. Ollie's backed off a little bit. Ralph Lauren, a new name with a cup and handle formation. And Shark Ninja re-emerging back on the list. A little bit sloppy here, but after getting shaken back down below the 200-day, now coming back within a stone throw of all-time highs again. So back on the list. Take two, watching that. Symbotic. This was a big gainer on the week and now above the $60 million, $70 million average daily volume. Again, a wall of blue 3 weeks in a row on the weekly after earnings kick this one out of this stage 2 or stage 4 base back above the 200-day moving average. HPE with a nice week. Galaxy Global was an IPO we're watching. And that is it, folks. All right. So again, if you like our content, please like, share, and follow us on X and YouTube. We're also on Instagram. So hope everybody's having a wonderful 4th of July weekend. And we look forward to seeing how the high sentiment and how the market reacts to it over the next couple of weeks, as we are in a very powerful time period too, through at least mid-July. So have a great week ahead, and we'll talk to you next week.